We do begin our show, though, with the war in Ukraine and breaking news out of the devastated city of Mariupol.
This morning, a new attempt is underway to evacuate civilians trapped inside that besieged steel plant. A Ukrainian official calls it a complex operation, but says everything would be done to try and save the people inside. Mariupol's mayor says almost 500 people have been evacuated from the city since that UN-led rescue effort began. Speaking yesterday, UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres confirmed the mission and expressed hope that both Russia and Ukraine would continue to work together to get more people out.
A third operation is underway, but it is our policy not to speak about the details of any of them before they are completed to avoid undermining possible success. I hope that the continued coordination with Moscow and Kyiv will lead to more humanitarian pauses to allow civilians safe passage from the fighting and aid to reach those in critical needs. We must continue to do all we can to get people out of these hellscapes.
NBC News senior national correspondent Jay Gray joins us now from Lviv. Jay, good to see you. So Mariupol front and center once again today. What can you tell us about this latest effort to get more people out of the steel plant? Are officials optimistic that this is going to be successful?
Yeah, Joe, I think optimistic would be carrying it a bit far. But what they do tell us from the ground there is that the UN humanitarian corridor, at least at this point, is standing. And they are being allowed to move people out. They are quick, though, to point out that these situations have fallen apart very quickly in the past because of the intense fighting there. And so they are cautiously moving forward with this plan to rescue as many civilians as they can. Remember, the steel plant there in the center of all of this and the main focus for the intense round-the-clock attacks from Russian troops is a bunker not only for Marines and soldiers from the Ukraine, but also about 200 to 300 civilians, 30 of those children. And so that's the desperate push right now to get as many of those civilians out as possible. Again, good news, tentatively, is that they are being allowed to move people out, but it's something that's just really on a razor's edge as far as when the fighting may escalate again. And it's been something that those on the ground say has continued around the clock, not only on the ground, but from the air and missiles fired from ships at sea. So, Joe, it's a tough go there.
Jay, we're not just monitoring Mariupol, but also just the offensive in the eastern part of Ukraine by Russia. We've got fighting and shelling reported in places like Kharkiv, like Kramatorsk. What is the situation like there? Is Russia making progress?
Well, the progress is very, very slow, according to not only the defense ministry here, but U.S. officials who are monitoring this, obviously, very closely. But the fighting has become much more intense over the last few days and really continues to push people from that region, their homes destroyed, their communities lost. And so here in Lviv, to the west, many have escaped. They don't want to leave the country, but they want to get as far west as they can. And so what the government here in Lviv has done, and we're inside one of these, has created these modular communities. I want you to take a look inside here. This area is obviously where they can wash and dry clothes, something that is desperately needed as people continue to escape the violence. There are restrooms here. You've got housing. You've also got a meal hall here where people can eat. And as we walk forward and just kind of show you the layout of this modular city, there are several across the entire area here in Lviv, and more on the way. They feel like it's something they have to do. They believe they'll have as many as 200,000 people staying here long term for an extended period of time. And so they've created these little villages, they call them, places where people can live and kind of gather their thoughts and move forward. Situated near city bus lines, near schools, near universities, places where they feel people can integrate with the city of Lviv and become a part of this city.
Jay, I also want to ask you about this story NBC News broke yesterday about U.S. intelligence helping Ukraine sink that Russian warship. It comes right off the back of the New York Times report that said U.S. intelligence helped Ukraine kill Russian generals. Quickly on this one, is the Biden administration concerned this information is so widely known now?
Well, I think that the Biden administration, as early as this morning, has said, look, let's be clear, we're helping the Ukraine in their efforts, but this is a compilation of our intelligence, of intelligence from the ground, intelligence from Ukraine officials as well. And so they're pointing at this as more of a, a combination of factors that has helped with the war plan here as far as the Ukraine is concerned. And certainly they don't want specifics of what's going on with that help to be out in the general public.
Jay Gray with some signs of normalcy there in the background, kids playing sports. Jay, good to have you with us. Thank you.
Let's now bring in Lester Munson. He's a senior fellow at the National Security Institute and principal in the international practice at BGR Group. Thanks for being with us. So let's start with our new reporting that the U.S. provided that intel before that strike that sank a Russian battleship. So now officials say the U.S. did not know in advance that Ukraine was going to target that ship, and they weren't involved in the decision to actually strike. But they do say the U.S. identified the flagship, confirmed its location. Now, we've known the U.S. and Western allies have been sharing intel with Ukraine before this, and of course providing them billions of dollars in military aid and weapons. But how big of a deal was this specific loss to Russia, and therefore how important was our help?
Well, let's be clear. The help is hugely important and perhaps determinative of the outcome of the conflict. U.S. intelligence about what is happening on the ground, on the water, in the air, in real time is a difference maker in a fight like this. So this is hugely important assistance that the United States and perhaps the British and others are providing to Ukraine. That is clear, and I think the sinking of the ship obviously has huge value for morale of Ukrainian forces and is significant militarily. The question here is whether it is a good idea to be speaking publicly about this cooperation. The more Russia knows about how the Ukrainian forces are working and what they are relying on can only help Russia in a way. So while I'm very enthusiastic that the U.S. is providing this kind of assistance, I'm just as discouraged by the fact that this has become public. This is the kind of thing that should remain secret.
Yeah, actually, Lester, I'm sure this is something that you also know, but just to remind our viewers, the New York Times has actually also reported information shared by the U.S. had helped Ukraine kill Russian generals specifically.
Right.
I mean, is that something else that you're worried about? And when you mention that you're concerned that it's public, is that because you do think that Putin could sort of point to it as a way to escalate this even further in some way?
He can, anything he finds out about what Ukraine is doing, he will use to his advantage or try to. And so limiting the amount of things that he knows is a good idea. Limiting the amount of what he knows about U.S. cooperation with Ukraine is of benefit to Ukraine. We should be providing exactly this kind of intelligence. We should be providing weapons. The Biden administration has been very forward-leaning lately about what it's willing to provide to Ukraine. That is good. I think the public disclosure of all that cooperation is not so good.
We're starting to get reporting now about what's happening on the ground in some towns that are being occupied by Russia, Soviet flags, statues of Lenin, things like that. And of course, this is after years of efforts by the Ukrainian government to rid the country of communist symbols. Some areas, in fact, are also actually being made to use the Russian ruble as currency. What do you think about this? I mean, what does it say about Russia's long-term plans in the area?
I think this is actually a short-term play. On Monday, it will be May 9th. That is the anniversary of the victory over Nazi Germany. Russia, the former Soviet Union, and Russia celebrate this day. I suspect what Putin is trying to do is demonstrate that he's achieved things on the ground in Ukraine in celebration of this big anniversary. So these kind of symbolic gestures like flags and statues and that kind of thing are probably directly related to the date of Monday.
That's a great point. Lester Munson, as always, we appreciate your analysis. Thanks for joining us this morning.
Thank you.
This morning, the Supreme Court is surrounded by an 8-foot fence as protesters flock to the storied building. The new barrier was erected after the leak of that draft decision that would overturn Roe v. Wade. The leak ignited passions on both sides of the abortion debate, leaving lawmakers on Capitol Hill scrambling for a response as states prepare to criminalize abortion. NBC News correspondent Blaine Alexander has more.
Lillian Newton is a patient advocate at Hope Medical Group for Women in Shreveport, Louisiana, a position she pursued after going there as a patient.
I don't know if I would have made it through an unplanned pregnancy managing my mental health.
If Roe v. Wade is overturned, abortions in Louisiana, legal up to 20 weeks, would be immediately outlawed. And yesterday, the state legislature advanced a bill that would charge mothers and providers with homicide. Bradley Pierce, president of the Foundation to Abolish Abortion, helped write that bill and says his organization is working with at least a dozen other states on anti-abortion legislation.
We believe that abortion is cruel, and it's the taking of an innocent life, and we should make that illegal. And there shouldn't be some exception for mothers.
As Americans await the fate of Roe v. Wade, the Senate's top Democrat announced a last-ditch effort to protect abortion rights.
Next week, the U.S. Senate is going to vote on legislation to codify a woman's right to seek an abortion into federal law.
The measure is largely expected to fail, which is why some states are taking action. Connecticut's governor signed a law to expand abortion access and protect medical providers and patients, including women from out of state. And some states are placing focus on abortion pills that can be administered by providers or through the mail. They're FDA approved for up to 10 weeks in a non-medical setting.
I definitely think that we will see medication abortions increase. That may be easier in some cases than coordinating a visit at a time where a clinic has availability.
Legal experts say that paves a difficult path for states on both sides of the issue.
You'll see states in conflict with each other. You'll see states in conflict with the federal government. You won't see an end to court battles.
For now, Americans are watching the Supreme Court for a final decision. Blaine Alexander, NBC News.
Now to some COVID news this morning and new restrictions on who should be getting the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. Now, you might remember those reports of serious blood clots that caused the rollout of the one-dose shot to be paused. Well, the FDA kept an eye on that and now says though the risk is rare, it's reason to say that only adults who can't receive a different vaccine for something like an allergy or people who are not willing to get another shot should get that J&J vaccine. Joining us now to discuss this and other COVID news is Dr. Anand Swaminathan. He's an assistant professor of emergency medicine at St. Joseph's Health. Doctor, good morning. Always great to have you with us. So, over 18 million doses have been administered in the U.S. And back in December, the CDC did actually recommend people get a different vaccine over these concerns. Now we have this guidance from the FDA. So first, can you just explain the blood clot issue, just how rare it is? And for those who have already taken the J&J shot, should they be concerned?
There definitely shouldn't be any concern for anyone who's already taken the J&J shot. There is that very, very extremely rare risk of blood clot, and it's really just in the immediacy after getting the shot. So those who have gotten the J&J already, there's no reason to be worried about this at this point. And while this is important news, it doesn't have a huge impact on our efforts to vaccinate in the U.S. because we have the privilege of having other choices. We have both the Moderna and the Pfizer vaccines available to us, and J&J has been just a minor part of our overall vaccine efforts. The important thing, I think, is for those who have gotten J&J, that group of people, is to hear that as a booster, you can go and get an mRNA vaccine. That's probably that is what we've been recommending for a while. That's probably the best thing to do in order to cement the amount of immunity that you have to current strains. So for those who got J&J, I wouldn't worry about the blood clots. This is a minor part of our vaccine efforts, but go and get a booster with an mRNA vaccine next.
So, Doctor, while it might not have an impact on, let's say, the volume of vaccine we have available, I'm wondering, though, about kind of other concerns about this. I mean, it was hailed as this potential great tool in this fight. When you think about the beginning of the rollout, everyone was told the first shot you can get is the one you should get. And now one of those is essentially being decommissioned. I mean, does that make you concerned about vaccine hesitancy issues?
I think there will always be some hesitancy around these things when these issues come up, but people should understand that even with this warning, this is a very safe shot, and the risk of getting COVID, of getting sick from COVID, far outweighs the small risk of these blood clots. So I don't think it should really create too much of a problem. This J&J vaccine is going to continue to be an important part of global vaccine efforts, as it should be. And again, people should be very secure in knowing that this is how the FDA works, by reviewing this data and then coming out with updated protocols, updated recommendations to best protect our health.
Doctor, I want to ask you about Paxlovid. So questions have kind of come up about it. That's the antiviral pill that Vice President Harris took when she was recently diagnosed with COVID. But there's some back and forth here now on this drug. So results last week from a Pfizer trial showed that it actually, there was some concerns about its effectiveness. And then in an interview with Bloomberg, Pfizer's CEO suggested taking more of it if symptoms return. But that's something the FDA says don't do. So help us better understand this. Can you explain what the drug actually does, who should get it, and when, and kind of walk us through this back and forth?
Absolutely. We have had a little bit of confusion about this drug. This is one of our first therapeutics that can really be advantageous in keeping people out of the hospital. And that's what Paxlovid does. What Paxlovid has been shown to do is to reduce the risk of severe disease or hospitalization, especially in those that are at a higher risk. So this is not a drug that should be taken by young and healthy people. It hasn't been shown to reduce the duration of your illness or to reduce your symptoms. It's really in preventing severe disease or hospitalization, and again, should be directed at those people who are older or who have medical comorbid conditions that put them at higher risk for severe disease or hospitalization. And so this idea that the CEO put out about, well, if you take a course and then you're still having symptoms, just take another course. That's not how this drug has been studied. That is not how it should be applied. What people should know is that there is Paxlovid out there. It's in our community. It is available. If you develop symptoms and you're at a higher risk for getting very sick, talk to your doctor, go to one of the test to treat facilities and get this drug as soon as you can.
Yep, another tool in our toolbox to fight this. Dr. Swaminathan, thank you so much. Always good to see you.
Concerns about the economy are growing this morning because of the recent whiplash on Wall Street. The markets took a major hit yesterday after stocks rallied earlier in the week. This latest dip comes on the heels of that Fed interest rate hike that's aimed at cooling soaring inflation. NBC News business and technology correspondent Jolene Kent joins us with the latest. Joe, good morning.
Hey, Joe, good morning. It was the worst day for the markets in 2 years. All of the big gains from Wednesday were wiped out within hours of trading yesterday. It was an extraordinary reversal. And with the April jobs report, investors are bracing for another roller coaster ride today.
A massive U-turn on Wall Street this week. The Dow plunging more than 1,000 points on Thursday, its worst single day since 2020.
S&P 500 declining 3.6%. Every sector is feeling the pain today.
The Dow plunging more than 1,000 points, its worst single day since 2020. The tech-heavy NASDAQ also taking a beating. Hundreds of billions of dollars of market value wiped out.
It's rare that the NASDAQ jumps and then falls 4% at least on consecutive days.
It was a stunning reversal of the massive gains on the markets on Wednesday, when investors initially cheered the Fed's decision to hike interest rates again in an attempt to get inflation under control. A day later on Wall Street, a total about-face. Investors selling off some of the biggest names. Etsy sinking nearly 17%, Tesla sliding more than 8%, Amazon also down 7.5%, and cryptocurrency taking a major hit, too. Popular pandemic stocks also continued their slide. Peloton, Zoom, and Netflix all down more than 60% each in the last 6 months.
The stock market is betting what the economy is going to look like, not today, but 12 months from now. And what the market is saying, effectively, is it's going to be worse, not better than where we are today.
Thanks to the interest rate hike, borrowing money is about to get even more expensive. Experts recommend consumers weather the storm by reducing their debt. And when it comes to your portfolio, they say hold tight.
Typically, doing nothing is the best trade you can make in an environment like this. There is no question that the next several months are going to be very, very bumpy.
Bumpy and very unexpected. We'll have to wait and see how all of this shakes out. But later this morning, we're going to be getting the April jobs report. It's expected to show that the unemployment rate ticked down just slightly, which would be good news. And 380,000 jobs were added back to the economy last month. But there are still nearly 2 job openings for every unemployed worker. That labor shortage, Joe, is still one of the main reasons that prices and inflation are just so high right now.
Huge issue we hear about all the time still. All right, Jolene Kent, thanks so much. Appreciate it. Time to get a check on your morning news now. Weather.
Which means it's time for Michelle Grossman to join us. Hi, Michelle. Happy Friday.
Hi there, guys. Happy Friday. And unfortunately, we're looking at a wet Friday for many of us, especially in the eastern half of the nation. Yesterday, we had a lot of rainfall in Fairgrove, Missouri. We saw up to 6 inches in some spots of the Ozarks. It caused flooding. You can see the roads were covered here and flash flooding. And that's what we're concerned with today. We're concerned with more rain falling. We could see over 3 inches in some spots. The grounds are already so saturated, so we're going to see more and more videos like that as we go throughout the next couple of days. Here's a look at the flash flood threat as we go throughout this Friday. The green, that's your flash flood watch, and the red is a flash flood warning. And remember, when you have flash flooding, that is the #1 deadliest weather event because it's just comes swift and it's fast and it's powerful. So here's a look at storm radar. You can see lots of rain from the Great Lakes to the Northeast down to parts of the Gulf Coast states. And we're looking at some lightning too in Alabama heading into Georgia. We're looking at heavy rain where you see the yellows, the reds, the oranges, and that will be the theme throughout this Friday. So your rainfall forecast up to 4 inches locally in parts of the Northeast, also the Mid-Atlantic. Generally, we're going to see 1 inch, a big swath of an inch. But as we get closer to the interior parts of the Northeast, along the Mid-Atlantic, I-95 corridor even, we're seeing 2 to 3 inches of rain. That will be today, also through tomorrow, and then parts of Sunday. We do have a severe weather threat once again. This is the 6th day this month. We're going to have another threat tomorrow, so 38 million at risk. We're looking at winds gusting near 60 miles per hour, damaging hail, and a few tornadoes are possible from the Gulf Coast states all the way up to the Ohio Valley into the Northeast. And this is a big story, too. Record heat by Sunday in the southern plains. 107 degrees in Laredo. That's 15 degrees above what is typical for this time of year. 1 and 2 in Midland and 95 in Dallas. We head towards Mother's Day and we're going to hold on to that heat. So many brunches, I guess, are going to be indoors with air conditioning because we're looking at San Angelo, 104. The record is 103. We could certainly break a record there. And 97 in Dallas on Mother's Day. Crazy.
Or a lot of sweaty brunches, too. That's also a possibility.
Yeah. Lots of deodorant.
There you go. All right. Here's what we got you for Mother's Day, Mom. All right. Thank you, Michelle.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.